Obviously, you just saw us pass something that we've been working towards for 2 years now. We made a commitment to Iowans that this was going to be our leading priority, and we wanted to make sure Iowans saw true property tax relief that was sustainable, that was immediate, it was long-term as well. And that's something we're extremely proud of. We've worked with the Senate, we've worked with the governor for 2 years now to deliver this, and I think what you just saw is going to be something that really transformed the property tax system in Iowa. When we started session, we were extremely clear about what we wanted to achieve, which was putting the taxpayer first. I think this was a tremendous step in that direction, and really puts us in a position to be able to go home to our constituents and say we delivered on something that we said we were going to do at the beginning of session, and it feels really good to accomplish that as a caucus.
What is it about the bill that will meaningfully lower those taxes?
Yeah, without going too far into the weeds, unless you guys want a little bit into the weeds, I think a couple things that you can immediately point to, and then long term. Overall, the 2% cap, yes, there were some things that were outside of the cap to give some relief to communities so they didn't see an immediate overhaul of the entirety of the system, is that 2% cap, and that's what you'll see kind of bend that trend line of revenue. I think a couple other pieces that are important in there is looking at buying down the 540 levy. That's on all classes of property, so that'll get down to 490 over the next few years, over the next 6 years. Also, when we looked at the SAVE piece, SAVE is something that was passed about 20 years ago. I actually voted for the statewide penny, and at that time, the intentions were to improve infrastructure in rural Iowa, as well as provide some property tax relief through that system. Today we took a step towards, 20 years later roughly, took a step towards putting more of that money towards the property taxpayer. So I think there's several pieces in there that have immediate and then long-term impact, and that 2% cap is really what affects a lot of those potential growths. I think you heard some things today that I'm not sure, even while our bill changed a little bit from what we sent over to the Senate, the concept was generally the same. And what we heard on the floor today about other plans that were sustainable and had long-term impacts, the plans that have been offered on the floor by the minority party this year that we saw, I don't know how they would be sustainable. They were not long-term. They would just be a one-time infusion. We wanted to transform the system, and I think you saw that happen today.
You've been debating, discussing this for the past few years. What is it about the system that has been so vexing, prevented you from doing this in previous years, and helped you get rid of this?
Well, I think ultimately, one of the things that I kept saying, and I probably said to you guys every week that we've done one of these when asked about property taxes, is we have to be willing to pick a side and say we're going to put the taxpayer first. We've always tried to approach property taxes from the standpoint of how do we keep everybody whole and provide relief. It's very difficult to do. So I think what you saw here today, some of the changes that we made to stair step in some of the some of the credits, stair stepping them out, some of the exemptions coming online. I think seeing that does find a balance where we can still provide services in Iowa, but over the course of the long term, I think you're going to really see a change of how the services are delivered in Iowa in a more efficient way and providing that significant relief. So picking the side of the taxpayer, I think, is what really drove this conversation, why we were able to get something done.
Can you explain a bit more about the multi-residential property tax? I know a lot of landlords came during subcommittee public hearing, said it would raise rent. Can you talk about that? Is it going to raise rent?
And here's what I would say to this. As far as the conversation on multi-residential. Obviously, we didn't have in our original bill, but we also weren't going to walk away from property taxes. And so if you saw what we did today in the bill to try to find a compromise with the Senate, they started at a much higher level, and some of the subcommittees and public hearings that took place were not on the bill that we passed here today. So a couple of things I would keep in mind on that multi-residential piece. If you saw in there the first year, you start at 0%. So those immediate impacts that are being discussed that we continue to hear, we heard on the floor today, are not going to even be realized from the standpoint of changing where that would be within the rollback. We also phased in any sort of an increase that would be over time to give time to plan, as well as, like I said, providing for that first year of a level of certainty. And keep in mind, as we phase in the 3 and then a 3 to get us up to 6% above residential, at the same time, we're going to be buying down that SAVE property tax relief, as well as buying down the uniform 540 levy. So that's kind of where we felt as a House, if we were going to go down that path, we wanted to stair step that in, and at the same time buying down the rates through those two mechanisms I just touched on.
Can you characterize what the last 36 to 48 hours were like with these negotiations?
Are you counting?
Probably much like you did.
Yeah. Well, you don't look a day over 40 with all that time we've put into it. But obviously, we've had continued conversations. Representative Nordman said that, and he's done a tremendous job. Him and I working together as a new Ways and Means chair. I've been extremely impressed with the amount of work that we've put in collectively, not just here in the House, but working with the Senate and the governor. And really, I think, I've said all along, the 2% cap was something, regardless of how it was implemented, was in all of the bills. And I think that is truly where you get that transformational change long term. And so I would say, starting from that position, working with the Senate and the governor, that put us on a good trajectory. Now, the last 30 to 40 hours in which we've been doing that, the concepts for the most part had really been hammered out. It's just the details on how you want to implement it. Like the last question, how many years do you want to stair step out the credit, or how many years would you stair step into change to multi-residential? Those were the kind of things that we were really working through. The general concepts, I would say, have been there more than just in the last 30 to 40 hours.
Can you respond to the criticism of the tax increment financing changes, that communities rely on that for redevelopment projects that increase the tax base, and Representative Wichtendahl suggested that these changes are going to make that much more difficult?
Yeah, and so what I would say, again, getting back to finding a level of compromise, the first bill that we released in the beginning of session, we chose not to tackle that, but we realized between the governor and what the Senate had been sending us, also communicating to us, they would like to see those changes. That's why we made the decision to, as we were looking at it, how do we make sure that our rural communities especially, but all communities, can continue to access tax increment financing. But at the same time, I don't even think Iowans realize we're putting in, I got so many numbers running through my head, probably between $50 and $100 million a year of state backfill into those projects to make sure that our schools would be held harmless. And so really our changes that we're seeing here today is something that we've been trying to do as a legislature, to at least make sure that that level of backfill that we're providing at the local level starts to be realized when it comes to real growth in the property tax system. So I think the changes that we made today really find a balance where the TIF program continue to operate. But it's something, I've been here for 20 years and we have not made this level of change to the system. And most things that have been around for 20 years should probably at least be looked at.
Just given overall, sorry if there
Oh,
are
you're good, I'll go next.
questions on property taxes, but just like beyond that, flashback to January when you were giving your priority speeches, thinking about what you got done this year, what do you see as wins? What are you going to talk about?
Yeah.
On the track?
Yeah, and the things that, I just look at it from the standpoint of not even thinking through to get through June and then get through November, but even just here as we stand here today, I was thinking about that in the chair as I was sitting waiting between bills. When we started session, we laid out a few priorities that I think that we made some tremendous strides on. Obviously, property tax, touched on that, can answer more questions if needed, but also looking at some of our tough on crime packages to make sure Iowa's a safe place. We were able to get to an agreement in which we strengthened our repeat offender laws here within the state. We made tremendous strides. We obviously weren't able to get the true 3 strikes that we set out to get, but I think what we were able to do on the repeat offender laws really is a big step towards getting to that ultimate goal. Also looking at bail reform, that was a bill they worked on. We passed over to the Senate, we were able to find agreement on. And so I think there was a lot of the things that we laid out in the beginning of session that we were able to accomplish, while this property tax piece kind of hung over everything else all legislative session.
So the Senate is still going, but hasn't taken up eminent domain legislation this year. How might the House and Senate actually build consensus around that next year?
At this point in time, as far as obviously where we are here with the position that we stand here within the House and adjourned, we recognize I'll answer the question the same. I sometimes feel like I'm a broken record, but from the standpoint, from the House's perspective, we stand ready and willing to have any negotiations on a bill that would be sent over here. And yet again, we leave without having seen anything come over from the Senate. And now, we've had communication and contact and shown a willingness to want to work on things through the pieces of legislation that we've passed over the last several years. But again, I recognize from Iowans' perspective that there is a level of frustration. This is an issue that I really wish we would have been able to make more progress on, but I will only speak on behalf of House Republicans. We've tried, probably I'm guessing around a half dozen bills to try to find a level of a solution on this issue to give some certainty to property owners in the state of Iowa. And again, we share your frustration that we're unable to get something, but that doesn't mean that that's something our caucus won't continue to fight for as we move forward.
Can you
I'll
talk
do
about the
one.
standings bill, sort of good, bad, compromises, trade-offs? You didn't get the $7 million for the para-educator funding. Can you talk about some of those choices that went into that bill?
Yeah, I know you're going to think this is crazy. Going back in my memory banks, I put so much of my thought into the property tax piece, even though it was 20 minutes ago, I had to go back through that. I think one of my objectives has always been, when we're entering into the standings negotiations at the end, is and then you saw this one this year was fairly significant in size. Keep in mind that we made an agreement with the Senate to try to minimize as much policy in each individual budget as possible, to keep it truly more about the budget conversation. So if you saw that bill today and thought, wow, there's a lot of pieces in there, some of those pieces of policy would have been things that would have otherwise been in the budget. Or to your point about the $7 million, that was something at the beginning of session that we put the other $7 million during the SSA debate. This $7 million that we're discussing right now, I mean, I think we knew it was going to be a tough uphill climb. It was something that we were obviously unable to achieve throughout our negotiations, but we do take pride in the fact that at least we were able to get that first $7 when we were setting our SSA level. And as you just look back through the things that we were able to accomplish today, I think, yes, the standings is a big piece of this, but really a lot of our focus is going to be as a caucus on what we're able to achieve today on property tax.
Kind of related to the eminent domain issue, you passed a hydrogen-related bill yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Do you think you've answered the kinds of questions that you've been trying to answer on the carbon sequestration pipeline with that legislation, so that hydrogen development can proceed without the kind of angst among certain people?
Yeah, and I think, so I'm always careful, because whenever we're talking about any sort of land issues, to make sure we're separating what we're really looking at here when it comes to hydrogen exploration. I think it is a tremendous opportunity for the state to look forward, but as you guys saw when we ran that bill, I don't know if yesterday is still yesterday on the clock or how that would work, but when we ran the hydrogen bill, I think you saw us put a few amendments on there. There was, throughout our caucus conversation on that, we wanted to make sure that we were providing very strong landowner protections. Someone that lives currently in the phase 2 of the pipeline, hearing from my constituents, two of the things that many of us have heard over and over is, when people can come onto your land and survey without permission, and also just constantly being asked to come onto your land. I don't want to call it harassment from the standpoint of truly terrible harassment, but just continuous over and over requesting to come on your land. Two of the pieces that we put into that amendment, I think, are a very clear signal and response to what we've heard from landowners, whether it was on the pipeline or in response to what this bill looks like. We want to have growth and development here in the state of Iowa, but also we have to recognize the rights of the property owners as we do it. All good?
Thank you.
I just want to tell you guys, thank you. I appreciate it. I do look forward to, every Thursday. I'm probably the only one in the building sick enough, and no offense to you, every Thursday to look forward to this, but I truly do appreciate our relationship and our openness to be able to do this, and you guys ask great questions, and at times I hope I give at least good answers. So thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Yeah.